They said a man like Lucas Hale wouldn't last another winter in these woods. But when the blizzard swallowed the road and his dog began to bark at nothing, something ancient stirred beneath the snow. The cabin that appeared through the mist looked too perfect to be real. Its chimney smoking against the pale sun, its door half open like an invitation. Inside waited a man older than the storm, with eyes that remembered when warmth was still a miracle. By morning, the old man would be gone, and Lucas would inherit a key to something buried deep beneath the frost. They called it the Garden of Still Heat, where silence breathes and kindness becomes fire. But before he could find it, others would come, chasing profit instead of faith. And the forest would remember who listened and who didn't. Stay till the end, because this story isn't about what was found. It's about what refused to die. Thank you for watching this story on Emotional Edge, where every tale reminds us that kindness, courage, and loyalty still matter. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Your support helps us keep sharing heartfelt stories that bring warmth, hope, and humanity back into our world. From all of us here, and from every loyal dog and quiet hero we honor, thank you for being part of our family. Thank you for being here with us. And now, let's continue our story. The Vermont forest stretched like a frozen sea beneath a pale winter sun, the birch trees standing white and still as if carved from bone. Lucas Hale drove his battered silver pickup through the endless snow until the engine sputtered and died, leaving only silence and the faint ticking of cooling metal. He sat for a moment, watching his breath fog the glass, eyes distant and tired. His short brown-grey hair clung damp to his forehead, his stubbled jaw set with quiet resolve. He wore a dark green flannel shirt beneath a weathered brown leather jacket, a grey scarf pulled tight against his throat. Beside him, Rook, his 6-year-old German shepherd with silver cream fur and sharp amber eyes, watched him steadily, ears flicking at every sound. "Well, partner," Lucas muttered, "looks like we're walking again." He stepped out into the cold, boots crunching through fresh powder, and the air bit his face like a blade. The forest was endless and eerily quiet. Rook leapt down beside him, nose pressed to the ground, tail low but steady. The two had been drifting north for weeks, chasing rumors of work, of peace, maybe of nothing at all. The snow came down fine and dry, shimmering in the pale light, and Lucas began to walk, hands deep in his pockets. His breath rose like smoke in the stillness. Rook stopped suddenly. His body stiffened, head lifted, nostrils flaring. Lucas followed his gaze, and then he smelled it too. Smoke, real wood smoke. Out here, that was no small thing. It meant life. Shelter. He whispered, "Lead the way." The dog moved ahead, sure-footed and silent, guiding him through the birches until the trees opened into a small clearing. There, half hidden under a drift of snow, stood a cabin. Its chimney sent a thin ribbon of smoke into the pale sky. Light glowed faintly through a frosted window, gold against the white. Lucas stopped, breath caught halfway between hope and disbelief. "You see that, Rook?" The dog barked once, tail flicking. They climbed the short steps to the porch. The wood creaked under their boots. The front door was slightly ajar, a sliver of warmth leaking through. Lucas hesitated, then knocked once. "Come in before the cold owns you," came a voice from within, rough with age, but steady as bedrock. Lucas opened the door and stepped into another world. The heat hit him first, sweet and heavy with pine smoke. The cabin was small but alive, lined with books and jars of herbs, a kettle whistling softly on the stove. Near the fire sat an old man wrapped in a grey wool coat, white beard glowing in the firelight. His eyes were the pale blue of thawing ice, kind yet sharp enough to see through memory. "Name's Silas Wren," he said, voice warm despite its gravel. "You look half frozen." Lucas nodded, pulling off his gloves. "Truck died on the road." Silas gestured to the chair opposite him. "Then the road brought you where you were meant to be." Rook circled once and lay near the fire, his fur catching the golden glow. Silas smiled faintly. Smart dog. Loyal too. He knows where safety lives. Lucas crouched to scratch the dog's neck. He's saved me more times than I deserve. For a while, they drank tea and listened to the wind move across the eaves. The silence was comfortable, the kind that only exists between men who've both seen too much. Then Silas spoke again, voice low and measured. There's a place not far from here, a house without doors or windows, built to hold warmth forever. Lucas frowned. You mean a story? The old man's eyes gleamed in the firelight. Not a story, a promise buried under the snow. Some say it hums when the wind stops. Rook lifted his head, ears twitching at the words as if he too could hear it. Silas smiled softly. See, dogs don't need proof. They feel truth in the air. Lucas didn't answer. The fire cracked, and outside the wind had stilled completely. Somewhere beneath the floorboards, or perhaps beneath the earth itself, he thought he felt a faint vibration, steady, rhythmic, alive. Rook's ears tilted. Silas poured him another cup of tea and said, Rest now. Tomorrow, the forest will show you what it remembers. And as Lucas leaned back, the warmth and exhaustion washing over him, he could have sworn that under the whisper of the snow, something ancient was breathing, slow, patient, waiting. The morning broke pale and quiet, the kind of winter light that seemed to belong more to dreams than to the waking world. A thin veil of frost had crept across the cabin's window overnight, turning the outside into a blur of white and silver. Lucas Hale woke to the low murmur of a fire that had nearly gone out. The air inside was cool but gentle, scented with pine resin and old paper. For a moment, he lay still on the small cot, watching dust drift through a sunbeam, uncertain whether he was still dreaming. Then Rook stirred at the foot of the bed, stretching and shaking his coat, sending tiny crystals of ice into the air. The dog's amber eyes met his, alert, expectant. Lucas sat up slowly, the quilt sliding from his shoulders. His body ached pleasantly, the ache of someone who had survived another night. Across the room, Silas Wren sat in his wooden chair by the hearth, motionless, eyes closed, the morning light spilling over his lined face. You awake already? Lucas asked softly. There was no answer. He rose, crossed the room, and saw that the old man was sleeping deeply, his breathing slow and even. A half-finished cup of tea sat on the table beside him. Next to it lay something else, a black iron key, heavy, its surface dulled with age. Lucas reached for it, then stopped. The handle was carved with 7 tiny circles arranged like a constellation, worn smooth by time. When he brushed it lightly with his fingers, a faint hum vibrated against his skin, soft as the low note of a distant cello. Rook lifted his head, ears twitching, then gave one quiet huff, as if in recognition. Lucas frowned, glancing toward the window. The snow outside had stopped falling, and the forest seemed to be holding its breath. He set the key down carefully and poured water into the kettle, letting the simple act steady his thoughts. When the whistle began to rise, Silas stirred at last. The old man's eyes opened, pale and clear, their calm startling after so much stillness. You found it, he said quietly. Lucas turned. It was on the table. I didn't mean to. You were meant to, Silas interrupted, a faint smile ghosting his lips. That key was built to listen, not to open. Lucas blinked. Listen to what? Truth, Silas said simply, leaning back. Sound carries warmth, son. We once built a place that could live on it. A shelter beneath this forest, powered not by fire, but by resonance. A heartbeat turned to stone. Lucas tried to picture it, but couldn't. You built it? Silas nodded. Long ago, when the government thought nature could be engineered to obey. We called it the Garden of Still Heat. It was meant to last 100 winters without flame. But they buried it. Too dangerous, they said. Too alive. The words hung between them, heavy and strange. Lucas looked again at the key. "And you kept watch over it?" Silas's smile deepened, faint as smoke. Someone had to remember where warmth truly comes. Not from machines or fuel, but from faith. The world forgot that. Rook rose, padding toward the door, his nails clicking softly on the floorboards. He gave a low, steady growl. Not of warning, but of attention. Lucas followed his gaze to the window. The light outside shimmered faintly, a pulse beneath the snow. "You hear it, don't you?" Silas whispered. "That's the forest breathing back. It's waiting for someone who still believes." He coughed once, the sound thin but sure. "When the snow calls again, don't ignore it." Lucas hesitated. "What does that mean?" "You'll know," Silas said, his eyes closing again, a tired peace settling over him. "The door that matters doesn't open from the outside." The fire crackled softly. The kettle hissed. Lucas stood in silence, the key cold in his palm, its carved stars catching the light. Outside, the birch trees gleamed under the pale sun, their shadows stretching long across the snow like lines on a map. Rook pressed against his leg, warm and steady. Somewhere beneath them, deep under ice and root, something old and patient stirred, listening. By dawn, the world had turned to glass. Sunlight slid across the frozen snowfields in sheets of pale gold, and the trees sparkled like they were dusted with powdered stars. Inside the cabin, the fire had burned low, leaving behind a faint red glow that pulsed like a tired heart. Lucas Hale stirred awake, the quilt heavy on his chest, Rook's steady breathing beside him. For a moment, he thought Silas Wren was still asleep in the rocker by the hearth. But as he stood and crossed the room, he saw that the old man's chest no longer rose. His face, turned gently toward the light, carried the peace of someone who'd finally gone home. Lucas stood in silence, the weight of loss settling slow and deep. There was no shock, only that quiet ache reserved for men who've buried too many good things already. Rook whined softly, stepping forward, pressing his muzzle against Silas's sleeve. The old man's hand hung limp over the blanket, palm open, as if still offering warmth. On the table beside him lay the black iron key. It gleamed faintly under the morning light, the carved constellation catching the sun. Lucas reached for it, holding it in both hands. It was colder than the air around him, yet somehow alive, a soft vibration thrumming through its metal like the murmur of a hidden current. He buried Silas that afternoon beneath the birch grove behind the cabin, where the ground was softer under the snow. The sun had turned the ice to a fine mist, and each breath looked like smoke rising from the earth. Lucas stood alone as the last clumps of snow fell into the shallow grave, his shadow long and sharp against the white. "You were right," he murmured. "The forest remembers." Rook sat beside him, ears back, silent but watchful, his amber eyes fixed on the horizon, as if already seeing where the road would lead. That night, the storm returned, not cruel, but insistent, wind moving like a living thing through the trees. Lucas sat by the window, the iron key resting in his palm. Every so often, it gave off a faint hum, barely audible, yet rhythmic enough to match the beat of his pulse. Rook lifted his head each time it happened, alert but calm, as though he understood something Lucas did not. When morning came again, the world outside had shifted. The forest no longer felt like wilderness. It felt expectant. Lucas packed lightly, a thermos, a rope, a knife, a small lantern, and the key, which he hung on a leather cord around his neck. He opened the door, and Rook trotted out ahead, nose to the wind. The tracks of yesterday had vanished. The snow was clean and untouched, the land reborn overnight. "Where to, boy?" Lucas asked. Rook gave a low bark, tail wagging once, and started toward the birch ridge. Lucas followed. The air shimmered faintly with sunlight, and for the first time in months, he felt a quiet pull in his chest. Not dread, not fear, but direction. They hiked for hours, through valleys of white and silence, until Rook stopped. Abruptly, at the edge of a hollow, the dog's body stiffened, ears forward, tail frozen mid-sway. Lucas came beside him and looked down. Beneath a thin layer of snow, something dark curved out of the earth. Smooth stone, not rock, not ice. He knelt, brushed the snow away, and revealed what looked like a wall. Perfectly seamless, curved like the rib of some great creature. Its surface was warm to the touch, despite the cold. When he pressed his gloved hand against it, a faint vibration echoed through the ground, like a heartbeat answering his own. Lucas drew the iron key from his coat. The metal shimmered faintly in the sunlight. "This is it," he whispered. Rook barked once, sharp and certain. Lucas crouched, touching the key gently to the stone. The hum deepened, resonant, spreading outward in low waves that trembled through the snow. Light seeped through invisible lines, tracing a pattern of stars across the surface. Then the snow began to slide off, the air warming with each second. Before Lucas could breathe, a shape appeared, an outline, tall and arched, widening slowly until it became a doorway carved in light. A whisper passed through the trees, soft but unmistakable, the sound of the forest exhaling. Rook stepped forward first, nose to the threshold, tail wagging low. Lucas swallowed, heart pounding. "Guess we're invited," he said quietly. And together, man and dog crossed into the light. The light swallowed them whole, but it was not harsh. It was soft, golden, and alive, like sunlight filtered through water. When Lucas Hale blinked, he found himself standing inside a vast underground chamber. The air was warm, carrying the faint scent of cedar and rain. Walls curved around them like the inside of a great shell, smooth stone threaded with veins of faintly glowing glass. The light didn't come from lamps. It pulsed gently from the walls themselves, alive with rhythm, as if the earth were breathing. Rook padded forward, his paws echoing softly on the stone. The dog's ears twitched at a low vibration, humming beneath the floor, slow and steady like a heartbeat. Lucas followed, his boots scuffing lightly against the dust. The temperature was impossible, mild, comforting, untouched by the cold above. He slipped off his gloves and let his fingertips graze the wall. It was warm to the touch, alive with memory. The faint hum seemed to rise and fall in time with his pulse. All around them, the walls were etched with circles and arcs, geometric patterns that shifted with the light. In one corner, a cluster of glassy structures rose like frozen waves. Inside them, faint silhouettes of plants lay suspended. Ferns, moss, delicate flowers that should never have survived winter. He crouched near one and saw tiny green veins still alive beneath the translucent film. "They're breathing," he whispered. Rook whined softly, pawing at the ground. Beneath the dust lay what looked like thin metal discs, each engraved with star patterns matching the key. Lucas picked one up. It was warm. When he brushed the surface, the faint sound of wind, or maybe a song, echoed briefly through the chamber, fading as soon as it came. He straightened, the key heavy in his hand. "You built this, didn't you, old man?" he murmured, his voice swallowed by the vastness. And somewhere in the walls, the hum deepened for a heartbeat, as if answering. At the center of the chamber stood something different, a large sphere of stone suspended on a narrow base, its surface inscribed with countless symbols. Lucas approached cautiously. The air grew warmer, the light shifting from gold to soft red. He touched the sphere with the key. The hum changed pitch, climbing upward until it resonated through his bones. Then a soft voice, not words, but tone, filled the air, vibrating like music felt rather than heard. Rook barked once, tail wagging, circling the sphere with curiosity. Lucas closed his eyes and listened. Beneath the sound, he could almost hear a whisper, a memory, not his own. He saw Silas, years younger, standing in this very chamber, his hands pressed to the walls as if praying. Other figures beside him, engineers, dreamers, voices raised not in argument, but in wonder. "Heat is memory," Silas had said. "If we can teach the world to remember kindness, It will never freeze. When Lucas opened his eyes, he felt tears burning unexpectedly at the corners. He wasn't a man who cried. Not since war, not since loss, but something here broke through the armor time had built around him. He turned to Rook, who sat beside the sphere, head tilted, calm and patient. You feel it too, don't you? The dog gave a soft huff, resting his head against Lucas's leg. Then, from somewhere deep within the chamber, came a faint rustling. Lucas turned sharply, lantern lifted. A small animal, a snow-white fawn, stumbled out from behind a broken pillar. Its leg was caught in a loop of metal wire, old and rusted. It tried to move, but fell with a soft cry. Lucas knelt beside it instantly. "Easy, little one," he murmured, cutting the wire with his knife. The fawn trembled, wide-eyed, but didn't run. Rook stood still, tail low, watching in silence. When the wire fell away, the fawn rose unsteadily. The moment it did, the hum in the chamber deepened, the walls glowing brighter. The sphere at the center pulsed once, then twice, releasing a ripple of golden light that washed over everything. Warmth flooded the air, soft as breath. Lucas stared in awe. "It reacts to kindness," he whispered. Rook barked once, joyous. The fawn turned toward a tunnel of light ahead, then vanished into it, its small hoofprints glowing briefly before fading. Lucas stood there, key in hand, heart pounding, and finally understood what Silas had meant. This wasn't a machine, it was a memory, a promise, and it had just remembered love. The world above had thawed slightly by the time Lucas and Rook emerged from the chamber. The snow shimmered under the midday sun, and the air carried a strange softness, as if the forest itself was breathing slower now. Lucas looked back once at the slope that had sealed behind them. No trace of the doorway remained, only an untouched stretch of white. He whispered a quiet thank you to the silence and turned toward home. The cabin came into view hours later, its chimney releasing a thin wisp of smoke from the fire he had left burning. Everything looked exactly as before, except for the red SUV parked in the clearing. Its tires crushed the fresh snow, too clean to belong here. Rook stiffened instantly, a low growl rising in his throat. Lucas felt it too, a wrong note in the stillness. A man stood on the porch, his parka bright against the pale wood. He was in his 30s, tall and angular, with neatly trimmed hair and a camera rig slung across his chest. "You must be Lucas Hale," the stranger said, flashing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Name's Mason Trent. I run a channel, Hidden Histories of America. I've heard a lot about this cabin, about some kind of Cold War relic buried under the forest. You care to comment for my viewers?" Lucas didn't move closer. "There's nothing here for your camera." Mason chuckled lightly. "That's funny. Locals say otherwise. They talk about glowing snow, strange hums. Some even mentioned an old engineer, Silas Wren. Ring a bell?" Rook barked once, sharp and final. Lucas's jaw tightened. "You need to leave." But Mason's curiosity was a weapon, and he wasn't done. "I've got thermal drones out already," he said, tapping his phone. "They picked up a heat signature underground, something massive, steady. You're sitting on history, Mr. Hale. People deserve to see it." Lucas stepped forward, eyes cold as the snow around them. "Some things aren't meant to be seen. They're meant to be kept alive." Mason's grin widened. "Then I'll make sure it lives forever, on film." He turned to head back toward his car. Rook growled louder, blocking the path. That's when Lucas saw it. The faint red light blinking under Mason's sleeve. A transmitter. He was streaming already. Lucas reached for the camera, yanking the device free. "You're trespassing on protected land," he said quietly, "and you're endangering something you don't understand." Mason's eyes flickered, a crack in his confidence. "Endangering? What is this? A cult?" He gestured toward the forest. "You think that thing out there is sacred? It's tech, old tech. If it's working, it's worth millions." Lucas took a step closer, his voice low but firm. "It's worth more than your views or your paycheck. That warmth you're chasing, It doesn't belong to you." For a moment, neither man moved. The forest around them was utterly silent, snow drifting like fine ash. Then a sound broke the tension. A faint hum from beneath the ground. It rippled through the clearing, subtle but unmistakable, a pulse like a heartbeat rising from the soil. Mason's expression shifted from arrogance to awe. "What was that?" "The world remembering," Lucas said softly. Before Mason could reply, the key under Lucas's coat began to vibrate. The air shimmered, snow swirling in strange patterns around their feet. Rook barked once, twice, 3 times, the same rhythm that had opened the gate before. The ground answered with a low tremor. Lucas's eyes widened. "You've woken it." Mason stumbled back, panicked now. I didn't touch anything." "The garden hears intent," Lucas said, his voice steady. "You brought greed into its silence." A sudden gust swept through the clearing, scattering snow in a halo of light. The humming deepened, angry, wounded. Rook lunged forward, barking furiously, circling Mason like a guardian warding off a curse. Lucas grabbed the man's shoulder. "Get out, now." Mason tore free, bolting toward his SUV. Tires spun, flinging snow into the air as he vanished down the trail. The hum softened, fading into quiet once more. The air stilled. Lucas knelt beside Rook, resting a hand on the dog's neck. The key lay against his chest, warm again, not burning, but pulsing gently, steady as a heartbeat. "It forgave him," he murmured. Rook huffed, tail wagging once, as if in agreement. Lucas looked toward the distant trees, sunlight spilling between the birch trunks. Somewhere beneath that calm surface, the garden of still heat was alive again, watching, waiting, protecting itself. And for the first time, he felt not fear, but belonging. The storm never came back. Days passed, and the forest, once frozen and silent, seemed to have found a new rhythm. The birches swayed gently under a pale sun, their branches whispering in the wind like old friends sharing secrets. Lucas Hale repaired the cabin's fence that morning, the sound of hammer and wood echoing softly across the clearing. Rook lay by the porch, tail sweeping lazily, eyes half closed, but watchful as always. It had been a week since Mason Trent's intrusion. The man had left in fear, but his story, whatever version he would tell, no longer mattered. What mattered was the peace that returned after him, the hum beneath the ground settling into something gentle again, like a steady heartbeat the earth had remembered. Lucas could feel it when he worked, a faint vibration through the soles of his boots, a warmth that rose through the frozen soil. The cabin had changed too. On its porch hung a new sign Lucas carved himself: Winter Haven, rest for the weary. It was Silas Wren's dream brought to life, a place where lost travelers could find warmth and shelter. And they did. Some were truckers stranded by snow, others hikers who had wandered too far north. None of them asked questions about the forest, and Lucas never offered answers. He only handed them tea, built a fire, and let them rest beside Rook's quiet company. One afternoon, as the pale sun tilted toward the tree line, a woman arrived on foot. She was in her 40s, auburn hair braided neatly, a camera slung over her shoulder, not the sleek black device of Mason's greed, but an old film model held with care. "Dr. Mara Ellery," she said, offering a hand. "Environmental Bureau. I came across some of Silas Wren's designs while cataloguing historical archives. They led me here." Lucas studied her for a moment, then smiled faintly. "You found him then? Or what's left of what he built?" She looked around the clearing, taking in the cabin, the quiet, the calm. "It's remarkable. He was decades ahead of his time. A system that generates heat through resonance. It's beyond science. It's almost spiritual." Lucas nodded, glancing at Rook. "That's because it wasn't built for progress. It was built for mercy." They sat on the porch as the day faded, drinking tea that smelled of mint and pine. Mara's questions were careful, respectful. She didn't press for proof, only stories. Lucas told her enough to honor the truth, but not to endanger it. When she left, she placed a small wooden cross near Silas's grave, whispering, "Some inventions aren't made to change the world, just to remind it how to be kind." Weeks melted into months. Winter softened. Travelers came and went, leaving behind laughter, food, and small gifts. A pair of gloves, a carved spoon, a note that read, "Thank you for the warmth." The story of Winter Haven spread quietly through the valleys, not as legend, but as comfort. One morning, Lucas woke to Rook's low bark. The dog stood by the edge of the birch grove, tail still, nose to the wind. Lucas followed, boots crunching over the frost. There, beneath a stump, he saw it. A sprout. Small, green, impossibly alive, pushing through the snow. He knelt, brushing it gently with his gloved hand. The stem was thin but defiant, the kind that had no business existing in this cold. Rook leaned closer, sniffing, then wagged his tail once. Lucas smiled. "You see it too, huh? The garden's not underground anymore. It's here." He looked toward the rising sun, the light catching the snow until it shimmered like glass. "We're growing again, old friend." That evening, he opened Silas's old notebook for the last time. On the final page, he noticed a line he'd never read before, written in the old man's uneven script. "When you find warmth again, don't guard it. Let it spread. That is how we survive the long winters." Lucas closed the book gently and placed it beside the fire. The iron key rested near it, no longer humming, just warm, steady, content. Rook lay at his feet, head resting on his paw, eyes glowing softly in the firelight. Outside, the snow fell slow and silent, not cruel but tender, blanketing the land in peace. Lucas looked out the window, his reflection merging with the forest beyond. Older now, steadier, with a calm that no longer came from escape, but from belonging. He whispered into the quiet, "Rest well, old man. The warmth is safe." Rook raised his head and gave a low, soulful howl that rolled through the valley, a sound of faith, of life, of memory that refused to fade. The forest listened, the earth hummed back, and somewhere deep below, the garden of still heat pulsed once more, alive, patient, eternal.